Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Susan Lopresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul. This is the podcast where we explore the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to a woman's life, her health, and all aspects of navigating the midlife landscape. I'm your host, Susan Lopresti, and today I would like to introduce you to Dr. Jeanne Retief. Jeanne is a skincare innovator, a mental health advocate, entrepreneur, and mom. After building a successful career in international human rights law, she faced a life-changing diagnosis of panic disorder in 2015. Instead of letting it define her, she used it as a catalyst to create FIGGI Beauty, which is a skincare line designed for sensitive souls, and FIGGI Soul, which is a platform dedicated to open, honest conversations around mental health. FIGGI is currently sold online and at various indie beauty retailers across the USA, with two major retailer collaborations set to be announced soon. They've also just launched in the UK, marking a huge milestone in their global expansion. As a business owner, mother, and mental health advocate, Jeanne brings a unique perspective on balancing ambition, self-care, and well-being. And without further ado, Jeanne, welcome to my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm excited for you to share your story and your journey with my audience.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. So I'm really excited. There's a lot of information to cover. And I know that you had a career and you started with these panic attacks or panic disorder. What was it that you were doing? What was your career? And what do you think the trigger was with the panic?
Yeah, so my PhD is in international criminal law and the laws of war. So I worked in that field of humanitarian aid and development for 16 plus years. I had my own consultancy. It was very successful. I worked in the African development community for a long time, and I absolutely loved my career. But my panic disorder has been coming from a very young age, traumas that I didn't deal with, things that showed up later in my life. I'd always had an issue with anxiety, but I always say I was diagnosed with this before it became, in quotation marks, cool and everybody had anxiety. It was still very stigmatized. There was very little information about what the difference is between stress and an anxiety disorder. I didn't even know something like that existed. So my entire life leading up to that, I just went with the narrative that I'm too sensitive, I'm overly emotional, I stress too much, there's something wrong with my wiring because I just cannot handle pressure like everybody else can. But there was actually kind of this hidden, you know, storm I was dealing with that finally came to a conclusion in 2016.
And what do you mean by that? You figured out what was going on, or?
Yeah. So I was traveling for one of my human rights projects. It was a completely normal trip, normal day, nothing out of the extraordinary. The normal types of stress, getting to the plane, getting to the hotel, going to my first meeting. And when I went to my hotel room that night, I had my first panic attack, like real full-blown panic attack. I thought I was dying. I thought I was going crazy. Thought I was dying is actually the wrong word for somebody having a panic attack. You are absolutely convinced of the fact that you are dying and that you're going crazy. I lost feeling in my arms and legs. I lost my vision. My tongue started feeling like it was going thick. So I initially thought I was having a stroke, and I had the hotel call the ambulance, which was an issue in itself because I was away from work. So I was in the field. I wasn't in a very good area. It was very hard to get any kind of help. The hospital admission and the help at the ER was very traumatic in itself.
Uh,
And that whole event led to a year worth of tests of every kind you could possibly imagine, psychologists and everything, then leading to this conclusion that it is panic disorder. So that concluded the diagnosis, but that initiated the journey towards accepting this reality that is me.
right. So that's what prompted you to leave your career. So you felt like that was some trigger towards it at this point?
When I was diagnosed, I didn't leave my career. I did not accept my diagnosis, and I severely mismanaged it for a further 4 years. It wasn't until the end of 2020, beginning 2021, when we immigrated to Portugal, that it caught up with me in a very real way. I couldn't function with normal daily things and tasks. I was a shell of myself. I couldn't eat. I couldn't function at all. So I had to make a decision of what I was going to do because I couldn't be traveling back and forth to Africa from Europe all the time. It was COVID. I was in the human rights sector, so a large part of that business in any way came to a standstill. So I was faced with this reality of the fact that I now have a small child, I have a husband, I'm in a new country, I cannot function. There's something deeply, deeply wrong that I need to address. And this additional stress of a human rights career just didn't fit into that narrative anymore.
Mhm. I got you. Okay. So you transitioned into a career where you created a skincare line. Tell us about that and how it helped with the healing of anxiety as well, this whole transition.
Yeah, so the skincare Figgy Beauty was really born out of just complete survival. It, I loved my career. It really wasn't for me one of those things where I made this wonderful move and I pursued my passion. My passion was my career. I was very, very angry at the fact that I had to let that go. I went through a whole grieving process of losing my purpose and my identity and dealing with this diagnosis. There is so much of it that I cannot control,
Mhm.
no matter how much I would love to. But there are elements of it that I thought, okay, maybe there are small parts of this diagnosis that I can control. One of my external symptoms is extremely sensitive skin. I know and love rooibos tea, which I grew up with as a South African. I know all the scientific evidence behind it as a great calming skincare ingredient. And I knew if I wanted to do this, it needed to be something that gave me a platform to take ownership of my diagnosis, to feel like I'm doing something proactively to at least deal with one of the symptoms. And I wanted to formulate it. I wanted to be the decision maker. So I had to go back to school to do my certificate in cosmetic chemistry, which was also a saving point for me because it kept my mind busy
Mhm.
and it was challenging me in a different direction. And that's really why the skincare was born and how it came about. It wasn't this kind of big dream of owning a beauty company.
But it materialized into a phenomenal dream at this point, right? Because I was checking you out on Instagram and watching your reels, and you were demonstrating the products. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. So sometimes out of something bad, something good always comes from it, I feel like, right? There's some kind of a transition that happens when you go through something traumatic. Once you're on the other side of it, you could look back and see the big picture of it. Do you feel that way?
I most definitely feel that way. And I think that ties into one of the things you also asked previous about how this journey led to the healing of anxiety. And it didn't. It just led to to understanding the journey and that I need to learn how to navigate my roadmap. And yes, something beautiful was born of this. I've always had very deep seated spiritual curiosities and intricacies that I could never explain. And this led me to a long seeking journey, which helped me to find the things that I do well in that context and how that can help me in my daily life and journey, but also how that can help me help others.
Right, right. That's beautiful. So you mentioned about the South African ruby. How do you say that word?
Rooibos.
Robos,
Yes.
Robos. Tell us about that because it's a key ingredient in your skincare. So what does it do for your skin?
So, rooibos, otherwise known as red bush tea, is actually a herb, not a tea. So, you're drinking a herbal brew. And the scientific evidence of drinking it as a tea is so many decades of evidence by so many different doctors and researchers, and all of them peer reviewed. And it's been found that it is cancer preventative. It helps with diabetes, heart disease. They just released a new study to say that it is effective in assisting with the symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. And the reason why is because it has a completely unique structure to any other plant or species in the world in terms of how it formulates or how it presents its anti-inflammatory properties and antioxidants. So it's completely unique, and it only has these natural properties if it grows in this specific small region in South Africa with that soil and that temperature and that climate. France actually tried to reproduce it, and we won the court case to say that you cannot call it rooibos if it's not planted there because it loses all of these properties and it is then therefore no longer rooibos.
Right.
And as these studies grew, they started doing topical application studies. What happens if you apply it to the skin? And that also proved its ability to soothe and calm the skin. That's why we see it in South Africa in so many baby products for bum rashes and so on, because it's organic, it's Cosmos certified. And even the tea, if you drink it as a baby, it has no caffeine, it has no tannins. So it's just such a beautiful gift from nature to sensitive skin.
Right. Can we get it here in the States and have the
Yes.
same? Okay. And
There are many
so,
retailers that sell rooibos tea or red bush tea. I think you can buy it on Amazon. The thing is just to be careful because many sell it as true South African rooibos tea, but then usually when people complain about the taste, you should know it's not the real deal.
okay. So now how does that play into your skincare line? What is it doing for your skin?
Yeah. So it is the core ingredient in all of our products because it has such a wonderful ability to calm and soothe the skin. So it helps with that feeling of discomfort, burning, itching, redness, breakouts, because it's a natural antimicrobial and antifungal. It also helps with hydration. And then, because of its unique structure, it's a wonderful antioxidant, which helps us and our skin fight free radicals, which we all want
Oh,
to
yes.
avoid. But when you have sensitive skin, the gold standard in antioxidants, vitamin C, can be very upsetting to your skin. So, this is an incredibly well researched alternative for those of us with sensitive skin that are still seeking that protection to kind of intensify the qualities of your sunscreen and to help protect against free radical damage.
Interesting. What about as far as wrinkles? Does it help to alleviate fine lines and wrinkles?
Yes and no, because if you have good hydration and moisturization, then
Yeah.
fine lines and wrinkles are going to appear less because your skin is supple and plump and well cared for. And that it for certain does. As far as actually clinically removing it, like the gold standard retinol, the studies on that is still ongoing. And that is why our one and only anti-aging serum that we have is formulated with rooibos to do the calming and soothing and the antioxidant protection, and a very, very unique form of retinol that comes in the lowest dosage on the market for
Mhm.
those of us with sensitive skin so that it doesn't cause that instant inflammatory reaction.
Well, I'm looking at you, and your skin is flawless. It's
Oh, thank
luminous. You're glowing, and it doesn't look like you have very much makeup on. So it's just a beautiful, natural skin that I wish I had. It's
thank you so
really
much.
nice. So, my audience is a predominantly a woman in her 50s and older.
Yeah.
So, for that age group, are there any particular products in your line that you would recommend for a woman of that age who's
Yeah,
looking
so
to look
the
younger and more beautiful like yourself?
Yeah, so the Figgy line is actually marketed towards 40 to 60-year-olds.
Oh,
I'm in my 40s, and I find that after you hit that 40 mark, your skin just naturally does become a little drier because you're starting to struggle with hormones. If you're a little later on, you may be in menopause. So, that may be a challenge for dryness, especially. So, the entire line would be a wonderful addition to your skincare routine, especially if you are needing a lot more nourishment and moisture, because we really are specifically formulated for dry and sensitive skin. So, it's deep nourishment and restoration.
and the products could be purchased online.
Yes, you can purchase it on our website at figgybeauty.com, but you can also purchase it on Amp Beauty. We will be on Target by the end of May.
Oh,
Yeah, so you can find it at various places. And next week, we're opening our first store in Scotland. So we've just launched in the
excellent.
UK as well. Yeah. Figgy Beauty is US based.
Oh,
So that online store operates through the US. Amp Beauty is in LA. Target is obviously US based.
yes.
And then all of our small boutique stores up and down the East Coast are also all US based.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, great. Let's see. Anything else that you'd like to share?
I mean, I'm always just so grateful to be able to share the story of Figgy because I'm always so aware of the fact that you taking the time to speak to me, but also your audience taking the time to listen to this time is our most important asset. And it's the one thing we all don't have enough of. So anytime I am able to share this story and this journey and somebody gives me their time and space, I'm just so, so grateful.
Because of your situation with your panic attacks, and yes, so many people that I speak with, it seems rampant, really, that people are suffering with anxiety. Young children are suffering with anxiety. You mentioned about that panic attack where you thought you were dying. I had a
Hmm.
similar experience to that. And I actually went outside to start walking because I said, if I'm going to collapse, I'd rather be in public so someone could see
Yeah.
me rather than being in my house alone and who would ever find me here. What is one suggestion that you can leave with my audience to help with that? What would you suggest they do?
I think the first thing is to educate yourself properly. Anxiety disorder, there's a whole group of different types of anxiety disorder. If you are going to say that you have an anxiety disorder, it is crucial that you get yourself diagnosed properly by a psychologist or a psychiatrist that's taking the care and the time to ask the questions, not just prescribing things. Because I think that we've forgotten that all emotions are normal, but they are not necessarily fun to go through. So,
Right.
stress is a very normal response of the body, and it's possible you can be going through periods of chronic stress and you just need a little bit of help to get through that. That may not mean you have an anxiety disorder. That's why it's so important to diagnose it because it also mimics the symptoms of other very serious physical conditions that they may rule out if you go for a diagnosis.
Right.
And it's important to remember that the statistics show that all of us, no matter of our diagnosis, will probably have at least one panic attack in our lifetime.
Wow.
So yeah, the body doesn't forget. it stays with you. So it's more about what do you do after that, and understanding what an anxiety disorder means. What does it look like? How does it breathe? How does it function? Versus having a very challenging time in your life, needing support, needing a way to get through that, needing somebody to speak to that understands what you're going through.
Mhm.
It's so, so important to do that. And that would be my first step to use. Get a very good doctor. Remember, you can say no if you do not agree with the way that they are approaching things. Get a proper diagnosis so that you can understand what the tools are that you need in your very specific toolkit.
Right. And do you have any protocols that do you meditate, mindfulness, exercise in some way that seems to help as well?
Yes, so a panic disorder, usually people think that's somebody that gets panic attacks. And while that is true, it is a lot more than that. It is the panic attack, it is the panic hangover, it is how it affects your body. So it's the migraine attacks you get, the insomnia, the irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, celiac or gut issues, heart issues. It's very all encompassing on
Right.
how it affects your daily life. So the only way that I found to deal with this is a complete kind of lifestyle overall, which is not something that people often want to hear, and definitely not something that I wanted to hear. But the key part in managing my panic disorder is understanding what is triggering my panic attacks. So some may be trauma based, which doesn't matter how much work I do, it can show up subconsciously and trigger a panic attack, and I would have never been able to foreseen it. But other things I have now learned are triggers for me, like bright lights, full crowds of people with a lot of noise, not sleeping well, and having insomnia. So when these things happen, I know I have to take care. So I have good bedtime routines and sleep hygiene. I don't sleep with my phone in my room. I go to bed and start my bedtime routine an hour and a half before I lay down to sleep. I have my child in a good bedtime routine so I can have a good routine. I eat regularly. I have protein snacks with me because being hungry is a trigger.
Yeah.
I exercise regularly because I need to get rid of the anxious energy. And yes, I do meditate and do mindfulness, but I see it in a different way because of my anxiety. It's sometimes difficult for me to sit still and clear my mind, and it becomes almost more stressful for me. So
I've
I've
heard.
learned that meditation for me is anything that stills my mind, whether that be gardening or washing dishes or sitting on my swing, as long as it gets me into some kind of state where the thoughts are quiet or more aligned. That's meditative enough for me.
Right. So you mentioned food, and I just wanted to touch on that. Are there certain foods that you feel are a trigger, perhaps sugar or processed foods? Do you try and stay away from?
I mean, in
Mm.
terms of the irritable bowel syndrome, yes, there are triggers that I've learned through my physicians and my nutritionists. But in terms of triggering panic attacks, I definitely have to go low and slow on caffeine anytime I am about to travel somewhere.
Mhm.
So if I have a long flight coming up, I would definitely not be having caffeine 3 days before, 3 days after. It just makes me shaky, and I'm very sensitive to caffeine, and I don't need to be feeling any additional shakes.
Yes.
So caffeine, I know, can be a trigger for that, but all the rest of it is more triggers relating to the gut, which is triggered by the anxiety.
Right. Okay, I gotcha. Well, I have celiac disease, and you mentioned celiac disease, but I'm very, very careful with my diet. I try and
Yeah.
stay away from processed foods, low sugar. And yeah, this was a great topic. I appreciate you coming on. And I just want to thank you so much. And I wish you the best of luck with your skincare line. It certainly looks great on you, and I definitely will go to Target and check it out. So, in the next couple of weeks, you said it should be on the shelves.
The ETA they gave us is 29 May. So
Oh,
it's the end of May. Yeah.
very exciting. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I absolutely loved all the information that Jeanne was able to provide for us. Her website is www.FIGGI beauty.com, and from there you can purchase her products and see what she is all about. It was such a pleasure to have her on today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that some of the information that we shared about anxiety, if you suffer with anxiety, please know that you're not alone and there is help out there. So make sure that you pursue getting help for what it is that you need. Again, thank you for joining my podcast today. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please be sure to follow me here, leave me a comment. And if you feel that this episode or any of the episodes that I have put out so far would benefit someone who you know and love, I would so appreciate it if you would share it out with them. I want to get my message out wide and far and let everyone know that suffering with anxiety or depression or any kind of mental health challenges, there is help out there for you. You're not alone. And I just want you to hear that message and hear it loud and clear. Until the next time, be well, stay happy, and bye for now. Take good care, everyone.